And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending upon where you are on the planet. Welcome back to episode number 3. Today we're going to be talking about the ICF core competencies 4 and 5. 4 and 5. So I welcome professional coaches. I welcome coaches that want to be a professional coach, and I welcome those of you that are just curious about what is professional coaching and what is it all about. My name is Peter J. Redding. I'm a master certified coach. I'm a master trainer. I've been doing this for 25 years, and this is my way of giving back, giving you an insider's look into the professional world of coaching and also the professional world of coach training. So with that, let's get started. One other thing is, if you have a question as we go along here, type it into the chat box. And if I have time to do that at a break point or at the end of our session today, then I will address those questions. And if I don't get to them on this particular episode of the Exploring Coaching Mastery, then I will talk about those in subsequent classes that we do. All right? Welcome. Okay. So we continue on with the International Coaching Federation's ICF core competency model. In episode 1, we talked about the foundation, A, 1 and 2 competencies. Last week, we talked about competency number 3, which is under the co-creating the relationship. We continue this conversation today with 4 and 5. Competency 4 is cultivates trust and safety. Trust and safety. Competency number 5 is maintains presence. So these are two obviously very, very important aspects of creating a space for the client, coaching client, to do the work, which in professional coaching is the one that is doing the work. The work refers to what's going on inside of them, what's going on outside of them, what do they want to move forward on, who do they need to be or want to be in order to move forward with their agenda. And it's their agenda, not the coach's agenda. So cultivates trust and safety is, again, one of the bedrocks of a professional coach in terms of what I actively do as a professional coach to support my clients' forward movement. So let's get into number 4. Cultivates trust and safety. Definition: partners with the client to create a safe, supportive environment that allows the client to share freely, maintains a relationship of mutual respect and trust. Let me say a few things about this in terms of being able to share freely. If the client has not been in an environment where he or she or they will be able to share fully, they don't. They hold things inside. They process them internally. Mentally, emotionally, it's not been safe for them, perhaps, to talk about certain aspects of their life with their parents or with their friends or with their colleagues at work. A coach has the privilege and the responsibility, very high responsibility, to create that safe space, what I call sacred space, that allows the coaching client to talk about anything that they want and go as deeply as they are willing to go in that conversation. So cultivating trust and safety right off the bat is quite huge. We talked in the last sessions about the chemistry that's created and frankly needs to be there between coach and client. And this goes directly into this aspect of creating trust. if I don't have a chemistry, if I don't have a sense of freedom, if I don't have a sense of I'm not going to be judged, then I'm not going to open up. I can't go as deep to do my work as the client. It's human nature. I'm gonna close up and be guarded, as opposed to being open and free to talk about whatever is important to me in that particular session. So let's get into the detail of this. Number one competency under Cultivates Trust and Safety is seeks to understand, this is the coach now, the coach seeks to understand the client within their context, which may include their identity, environment, experiences, values, and beliefs. So this isn't just from the coach's perspective saying, okay, I get it. I understand your gender, or I understand your age, or I understand the stage of life that you might be going through. It's comprehensive. It's all of that and then some. It's understanding the client and seeking to understand the client in terms of all the different systems, the ecosystems that they're involved in. They're involved with their family unit. They're involved with their working environment. They're involved with the society that surrounds them, and on and on and on. And so it's not this doesn't say that I have to understand it 100%. Doesn't say that, because I probably will never be able to do that as a fellow human being, but seeks to understand. There's an openness and a compassion that I must have as a professional coach to have that space available, open, inquisitive, understanding as best I can to all of those different factors that are coming, that they're part of, and that have an impact on them, their life, their ability and willingness to move forward in any direction that they choose within their ecosystems. Okay. So I ask them that. One of the first things that I do with a client is have a foundation session, and we go into a number of these things. What's your family unit like? Are you living inside of are you married, not married? Do you have a significant other in your life? Are there other people in your life that you interrelate with on a daily or weekly basis? So that I can better understand what's the context of where they're coming from. What are their beliefs around that? What are the values that they hold dearly? And some of the experiences perhaps of, what's the experience with your current significant other, husband, wife, significant partner in life? What's going on inside of your work environment, and so on. Okay, so this is almost right off the bat in a coaching relationship is how big of a space as a coach can you hold? And when it says partner up there in the definition, that's my job. That's my role as a partner in this relationship, is to hold that space. The question becomes, this circles back on self-development, by the way, and I'm not going to get into that one today because I will talk about that for another hour sometime. But am I comfortable in holding that bigger and bigger and bigger space for my client to come into, or not? Again, coach does not have to be perfect. Thank you. Thank God for that, because then there's no coaches in the world. But am I displaying, am I demonstrating, am I asking questions that are not judgmental in nature or indicate that I have a bias against who they may be, or not? And can I demonstrate that to them right up front in the beginning of our coaching relationship and throughout our coaching relationship, to have a bigger and bigger space for them to play in, operate in, work in, explore, that does not bump up against prejudices or judgments or directions of how I think they should live their life, because that has no place in coaching, but to support them to figure it out and ask them the questions of what works best for you, what serves you, what's aligned with your life's work, your life's purpose, your core values, your belief structure, your belief system, all of that. So that's number one, is to open that space and to have the attitude and the mindset of a professional coach of, it's not my life that I'm living here. I'm creating a space for my client to figure out, understand, take actions, make decisions around what's going to be best for them and serve them in all the different aspects of their life. Okay, that's number one. Let's move on to number two. Number two, under Cultivates Trust and Safety, demonstrates respect for the client's identity, client's perceptions, client's style, client's language, and adapts my coaching to that particular client. All right, so I'll read it clean without my verbiage in there. Demonstrates respect for the client's identity, perceptions, style, and language, and adapts one's coaching to the client. So we talked about several of these aspects, but now this is a standpoint of, can I adapt my style as a coach to client number one that is different and have a different set of identity and perceptions and style and language to coaching client number two, which is neither one of those clients, one and two, are like client number three, because client number three is a unique, awesome, amazing human being. And can I adapt my coaching style enough to be able to honor, respect, support them in a manner that is more congruent with who they are and how they are doing their life? Again, or not. So this may mean that you don't have chemistry with every single human being on the planet, even though you have a coaching model that could support every human being on the planet, but you may not be the right coach for that particular client because your style is like an A-type personality, just staccato, that. Let's get on. Let's go. All right, what's next? Let's get on it. That will put off a whole bunch of people that might be a prospective client, and you either don't want to or can't adapt your style to the people that just need to slow down. Conversely, if you're a person that is kind of slower in terms of your processing, your questioning, your personality, just a second. I'm going to ask you a question here in a minute. Let me just think through it. Okay, here's what I want to ask. All right, nothing wrong with that, by the way. But that style that you have as a human being may frustrate the A-type personality or the person that is like, oh my God, let's get on with it, Peter, right? So respect the chemistry. I said in the last session, I think, or the session before that, you'll hear me say it again, the relationship must satisfy both coach and client. It has to work for both coach and client. So there's adaptations, okay, to that particular client within a band, within a range. and honor that range for yourself. And understand that you may not be the appropriate coach for this particular individual. And they may be 100% coachable, an awesome human being and magnificent. It's just that there's not a match. For those clients that you do take on, that there is a chemistry, also be mindful that they are not the exact same client. They think differently. They act differently. They process differently. Another great example of adaptation is one of the questions that I ask clients, again, in that foundation session early on, the first session that we ever do before we get into the weekly or biweekly or ongoing coaching sessions, is how do you process information? Do you do it visually? They use language like, oh, this is the way I see the future, or the way I see it is here's the options that I have. You'll actually be able to hear it in their languaging. So they're a very visual person. They process things visually. Other people's are auditory. It's the way they hear things. So, for example, if I have a client that is an auditory-based processor, and they're talking about moving forward in their career or having a relationship with a particular individual, and they're going to be working on this over the course of the next 6 months or a year, I may ask them a question if they're auditory to adapt my coaching style to that individual. Is, okay, so I want you to imagine a year out, you are in this different role in your career. What are some of the things that you're hearing? What are people saying? Addressing the adaptation in that particular client to their auditory senses, as opposed to my primary one is visual. So if it was me talking about and coming from my perspective, then I would ask the question for that particular individual, not all individuals, without taking the account of the individuation, is, well, how do you see it? Well, what do you see a year from now? How do you visualize that? What are you looking at? What are you seeing in your life? What's happening? Which may not be as powerful for the auditory person to say, what are some of the things that you're hearing around you? What are people saying to you? What are the voices in your head going through as you are celebrating yourself in this new career path a year from now? All, again, to this number 2, demonstrates respect for the client's identity, perception, style, language, and adapts one's coaching to that particular client. Good. Let's move on to number 3. Acknowledges and respects the client's unique talents, insights, and work in the coaching process. So coaching process here refers to 2 different parts. The coaching process is over the course of the 3 months or 6 months or 12 months that the coach and client are working together. It's also the coaching process of this particular coaching session. And so when I notice the client that's done some of their self-commitments over the course of the last 2 weeks, since the last time that we had a coaching conversation, and they come back in and it's obvious that they've done some of that work, or we go into that work a little bit that they've accomplished, is to acknowledge that. Hey, great job. Well done. I noticed that the specific self-commitment that you made to yourself 2 weeks ago, it sounds like you've done that. It sounds like 2 or 3 different ways, actually. You did it this way, and you did it this way, and you did it this way. It reinforces that support for the client. And some coaches will use the terminology, I am a 100% supporter of your agenda. I am a 100% supporter of your agenda. It doesn't mean that they have to agree to that agenda. It doesn't mean that they would have, the coach would have maybe done that differently if it was their life and their agenda. And I have an obligation as a professional coach to support my client because they are going to do it differently than I would. And that's why the subject matter expert, most coaches that come into being professional coaches have been a subject matter or are still a subject matter expert in many, many different areas of life. And they've written books. They've done classes. These are the 6 steps to delegate, right? Bump, 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 bump. And the client's talking about delegation, and so it's very tempting for the coach or the ex subject matter expert to jump in and say, okay, so you've missed step 4. You know, you have to go back and do that. Don't do that. It's the client's agenda, it's the client's agenda, and it's the client's agenda. And they're the ones that need to figure it out without my good advice, without any kind of advice, good or bad, for that matter. So allow the client to do the work, go through the process, and I respect their process. That's really the key message in this one for me. Acknowledges just saying what you observed neutrally, not against the backdrop of your expertise, by the way, but acknowledging them. Wow, you're taking the steps. This is fantastic. Now, in the back of your head, the subject matter experts still creep in and go, yeah, but you're missing steps 3 and 4. Toss it. Not appropriate here. Acknowledge them for steps 1, in your mind 2, in your mind 5 and 6, but just don't even say that there's something missing. Just acknowledge them for the work that they've done. I can tell you from my own personal experience here that when I acknowledge a client or a student for what they've learned already or what they're starting to do or starting to understand, they are more motivated to jump back into it and do it again. They just are. As opposed to critiquing them for what they didn't do or didn't complete or didn't follow through. So acknowledge them for what they did do. And this is a key aspect of working with a client to, again, cultivate that sense of trust and safety. You're going to get acknowledged by me for all the work that you put into this. Number 4, shows support, empathy, concern for the client. Again, this is an extension of everything that we've been talking about so far. But say it out loud. Indicate it in the timbre of your voice. Wow. And it could be just that. It could be, wow. I don't want to monopolize the dialogue. It's not my place to do that. It's not to go on and on and on and on like I'm doing now, on and on and on as a trainer. And right now I'm not coaching, obviously. But as a coach, show that sense of support, empathy, concern for the client. And have it be what I call a clean concern, clean empathy, clean support, without my stuff. So don't attach other stuff to it. It's just, wow, well done. Or I hear the angst in your voice. Be human. A professional coach operates both intellectually, right? There's a structure to all of this, and so I need to hold that lightly. But a professional coach is also an empath, is intuitive, is a caring, loving, compassionate fellow human being. And so don't forget your humanity as a professional coach. It doesn't have to be, okay, so this is just the facts. Just this is business, right? You'll go this deep with the client, but you'll never get to what's really important underneath that if you work at just the intellectual level. So it's a both and. It's not an either or. Don't let go of your brain. But don't deny the heart either. Okay. Let's move on to 5 and 6. Okay. Continuing then with the cultivating trust and safety, we move on to 5 and 6. 5 is acknowledges and supports the client's expression of feelings, perceptions, concerns, beliefs, and suggestions. Acknowledges and supports the client's expression of feelings, perceptions, concerns, beliefs, and suggestions. Again, this is a both and, isn't it? Their perceptions, mostly in the mind. The sense of feelings or concerns are in the body, the heart. Their belief systems are things that have been integrated and are probably in their cellular wisdom of their body. And so I both acknowledge and support my client's expression. Clients sometimes cry. And it could be cries of joy, or it could be on the other end of the spectrum, cries of remorse, grief, angst, anger. How do I acknowledge those? I just say, wow, I hear your voice cracking right now. It sounds like there's some deep emotions going on. That's the noticing. That's the acknowledging. The supporting is, so what's going on for you? Or if they're in the middle of a processing, I have often said to my clients, because they come back to a rationale of, oh my God, I'm crying in front of my coach, or I'm crying in front of this other person. They've been conditioned perhaps in their previous life that it's not okay. When I was growing up, it's not okay to show emotions in public. It just wasn't. If you want to cry, cry in your own bedroom. Okay, that was kind of the mentality of my family. And so I might just simply say, "You're safe with me. Keep going. It's just okay," in a very quiet, supportive voice. You're safe with me. Let them continue to express whatever feelings that they may be in this particular moment. Same thing with perceptions. They talk about perceptions of how things are at work, or how things are in their relationship, or how things are with their health. Perceptions about their kids, their parents, their neighbors. Let them continue. And do not start getting into a debate of those aren't the right perceptions, or those aren't the right feelings here, or those aren't the right beliefs. Allow the client to examine that and let them figure out if it's time for them to let go of that, or to embrace more of that, or to move to a different perception, or a different belief, or a different suggestion. And the suggestions, by the way, come from them, not me. And so we do that through questioning, which we'll get into when we get into creating awareness later on in the competency model. So here again, we're seeing acknowledges. This is not giving advice, but simply stating what is the definition of Webster that we looked up 25 years ago. The first definition of acknowledging is stating what is. So I'm listening for those things. I'm going to state it back, not as not in a way that brings my flavors into it, but just what I observed, again, cleanly, without a sense of judgment or condemnation or any of those kinds of things. And support the client's expressions, fully expressed. Okay. Number 6, demonstrates openness and transparency as a way to display vulnerability and build trust with the client. So by being connected with my client, again, at the heart level, at the feelings level, at the intellectual level, I'm demonstrating my openness. And transparency is a way of, basically, here's the way that I do the transparency piece is, I do not get into my story, by the way, ever. But I might say, I really understand. I can understand the pain that you're going through. I can understand the angst that you're going through. I can understand the confusion that you might have around this. So where do you want to go with this? And you're perfectly okay to go into this further if that serves you or not. I remember saying to one client a long time ago, I said she was very afraid of going into one aspect of her life. Again, I'm not going to share that for confidentiality reasons, but one aspect of their life, she would just, no, there was like a door there. It's not safe on the other side type of feeling. And so I remember saying something to the effect of, you're perfectly okay with me and safe with me, and you can even open the door and explore this area of your life. And then you can choose to do something about it or not. Completely up to you. And so to have that sense of vulnerability, of allowing the client to do that deeper work, is really quite significant. Because let me take a moment to talk about two major things in coaching. Is a lot of people, and I think almost all the coaching that I've ever done, have a goal, have an objective, have something that they want to go towards. And they move towards that over the course of the coaching relationship. Again, the 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, so on. So it's the thing. That's the thing that they want to accomplish. I want to move into the next higher position. I want to move physically to another city. I want to get into an intimate relationship. I want to lose weight. I want to study and learn more about biology. Okay, so there's things that a client will have in mind when they hire a coach. The second thing that coaching is all about, so the first one, let me go back in a second. In the first one, I have the responsibility of a coach to support my client to move forward. And move forward in the direction and along the path that they choose for themselves. Now, it may be in corroboration or collaboration with their sponsor at work. We want this person to be more comfortable when they are talking about financial aspects of the business. Okay? So there's that path of movement and forward movement. So I will check in with my client. Are you making progress towards your goal or towards your mutual goal that you set with your sponsor periodically throughout the session or throughout the coaching relationship? That's the first one. The second thing is there's more and more emphasis now at the International Coaching Federation in terms of talking about the humanity of the person. Who are you? Who do you want to be? Who do you need to be in order to be successful at learning more about finances? Standing up in front of a group talking about the annual report. Talking to the shareholders and so on. Okay, so who do you need to be as a human being? So there's internal things that are going on, and the development of that. So yes, in the parlance of the competencies, there's a what. What's the situation? What's the goal? What's the next step? So we call that in short terminology the what. And as an equal measure, The other piece of this is the who. And what the International Coaching Federation talks about in terms of the who is who does that client need to be? So it's the doing and the being. It's a both it's a both and, not an either or. If you just do doing coaching, you'll be very shallow. It's topical. It's situational. When you get into the depth of coaching, the who of coaching, now you're developing the human being and having a client go deeper and deeper into how do I interact? How do I interrelate? How do I want to show up? So we get into the areas of confidence. We get into the areas of knowing oneself at a much, much deeper level so that I can apply that who-ness to whatever I get involved in my life for the rest of my life, hopefully. So there's a sense of personal development. So a what, a who, a doingness, a beingness. The top one you could call the quantity of life. Okay, I want to sell more. I want to make more. I want to grow my business more. I want to do whatever more. Okay, that's fine. Absolutely, perfectly wonderful. But that's the quantity of life. More and more, professional coaches are looking at how can I develop the human being, the quality of life. I may still be just as busy. I may still have just as many issues that crop up in my lifetime. But there's a greater sense of deeper fulfillment. There's a greater sense of deeper satisfaction. I can still go home exhausted at the end of the day, but there's a sense of exhilarating exhaustion because I showed up personally. The inside of Peter Redding showed up. Okay. So with that, let's move on. Let me do a quick check here. Oh my God, we're doing so fantastic. This is awesome. All right, so let's move on. Actually, before I go on, let me see if I have any inquiries here. I think we're good here. Yeah. All right. So let's go on to this competency number 5. Competency number 5. Let's bring that one up. Competency number 5 says maintains presence. Okay, that's the competency itself. Competency number 5 is maintains presence. Definition of this is fully conscious and present with the client, employing a style that is open, flexible, grounded, and confident. Sounds like a professional coach. So if you're trying to multitask while you're coaching, then you're not coaching professionally. You're doing it. You're not doing it professionally. So, fully conscious, I take really good care of myself the day before, the week before, as a human being, so that I'm hydrated, I'm rested, I'm ready. I've got my client's file up front, in front of me. I've taken a few minutes ahead of time to clear Peter Redding's space and Peter Redding's desk and Peter Redding's life and Peter Redding's issues and blah, blah, blah. That's set aside. Here's a hint. If you can imagine yourself as a vessel, right, as a pot, as let's say a clay pot, and I empty myself of my Peter Reddingness, my strategies, my good ideas, the things that are going on for me, my issues, and I fill that empty pot up, that vessel, right? I keep the best of Peter Redding in terms of holding space, but I fill that space up with the brilliance, the essence, the magnificence of my client, that particular client, and fill myself up with that. The client can actually sense that, by the way. Early on, my client said quite unknowingly in terms of how I was going about doing that piece of coaching and that preparation of coaching. She said, Peter, when I come to you, it's kind of like coming home. Wow. I hadn't described that to her. It was not appropriate to describe that to her. But that's the sense, the energy of they're coming back to their most brilliant inner self, because that's what I filled myself up with. Number 1, remains focused, observant, empathetic, and responsive to the client. So again, the focus is 100% on the client. What's their journey? What are their original goals and aspirations for this coaching engagement? What's their agenda for today's session? Keep my focus on that and support my client. If they start moving off in a tangent that doesn't seem like it's connected to that, I'm going to ask them that. Okay, so you started off wanting to do this, this, and this, and I've kind of lost track. So can you help me? How does this relate to that? Oftentimes it does. It's just didn't make sense to me. And sometimes they're off on a tangent. And by holding the focus, then they can go, yeah, you're right, Peter. Okay, so I want to come back to this. Okay, good. Or, no, you know what? I think this is actually going to be more important to support me in this other thing, but I need to do it first. Perfectly okay. So we'll talk, again, hold that focus. But it's always the client's focus, not my focus. I'm observant, I'm listening, I'm hearing. If it's video and I can see their body language and I'm looking at the nuances of their face, and are they questioning themselves, or there's a concern, or there's a sense of joyousness or exuberance that's coming up. I'm absorbing all of that and taking it in. Empathetic, without being enmeshed. Empathetic is, I see the angst. I can feel I can feel what you're going through here in terms of the issues that are going to be raised because of this, without getting hooked into it. So I can be empathetic without getting enmeshed. I like that distinction. Enmeshed is then now we have 2 clients and no coach. That's not a good idea. Flexible. I'm flexible to go wherever they want to go in. They go halfway through a session or halfway through the 6 months that we have together, and the second month, perhaps the end of the second month, they go, something more significant than what we've been talking about has come up. Could be a health issue, could be a change of management that's taken place at their work, whatever that might be. And they need to change. Good. Okay. So I'm right there with you. Responsive to the client is, again, following their lead is the easiest way to say this one. In a coaching session, a young coach may have an idea that's been triggered early on in the conversation, say in the first 5 or 10 minutes, and then the client gets off on a sort of a tangent or goes deeper and deeper into something. And the coach then might, say, hey, what about the thing that you talked about, 8 minutes ago? Now, that's not wrong per se, but it may have missed the main issue of what they've been talking about and really talking about at a deeper level for the last 6 minutes. So the responsiveness is to respond back to the client in terms of what they're moving into. And if there's 6 different things, let's say 5 things that they have moved into, then I could quickly and succinctly say, okay, so I've heard this and this and this and this and this and this. Which of these do you want to dig into deeper? Doesn't mean we're going to ignore the other 4 things. But again, responding to what they've brought up, we say what the client has offered. They've offered, 5 different aspects of this particular conundrum. So which of these 5, being responsive to the client, do you want to go into? Do not choose. Okay, so obviously this is number 1. So what do you want to talk about there? Now I've just taken over the agenda. I'm not being responsive at all. Okay, that's responsiveness. Number 2, demonstrates curiosity during the coaching process, and that's a hallmark. If having a sense of compassion, I think, is probably number 1 thing in professional coaching. Number 2 would be be curious. Again, clean curiosity. Now, if they start talking about one of my hobbies, and I think I've shared, I love woodworking, right? Working with exotic hardwoods, and that happens to come up as part of the conversation with the client. Out of my own agenda, I can be curious sometimes. All right, do you use woods from Africa or do you use the woods from South America? Which one? That's my agenda. It had nothing to do with what the client's talking about. So I want to be responsive and curious about what they are talking about that satisfies, meets, furthers, deepens their agenda, not mine. Big distinction. Big distinction. So yes, hold on to curiosity. You can ask them from different perspectives, which is another great way to do it. We'll get into that when we get into the PCC markers, which are based on the ones that we're going through right now, by the way. But stay curious during the relationship and during each of the conversations that you have week by week. Number 3, manages one's emotions to stay present with the client. Invariably, client's going to be talking about something that triggers something for the coach. Because, hey, we're human. We have also gone through a loss of blank, loss of a valuable object, a loss of a job, loss of a person, loss of a dear pet, household pet. And the client is grieving around that loss. This is a great chance, and again, this is one of the things I do in my classes, is have a sheet of paper next to you, and on the top of it says, my stuff. My stuff. Which means that if I get triggered in terms of a loss, now they could be talking about the loss of a, let's say a pet that they've had for 12 years, and they just lost that pet. And there's a sense of deep, it's like losing a family member, all right? Now, while I may not have a dog, I may not be doing that, but I still haven't resolved in my own mind and my own constitution the loss of, let's say, an opportunity that I had, a professional opportunity that I lost. That went to somebody else. They didn't choose me to go into that. It could trigger that within me. Now, if I get back in my own head and I'm going through the process of why didn't they choose me? Why did I have to lose that? Why did I have to go through the pain of all of that? 2 things are going to happen. Number 1, it becomes autobiographical questioning in terms of what I might say back to that client. But worse, number 2, is that I'm off and I'm no longer present because I'm going through the processing of that loss that I have still not totally resolved for myself. So, and part of being human, part of being a professional coach, it's not that I'm not going to say don't do that, because you will at some point in time. the question for a professional coach is, how fast do I realize I'm doing it? It's like the recovery time. It's like in athletics. When I'm exercising, how fast does my heart rate come back to normal? Is a measurement of health, of physicality. The same thing in coaching is, how fast can I come back to, I'm off on a tangent here, thank you. All right, so note it down on my side note here, my stuff. Grief over loss of opportunity. Now, leave that, switch gears, come back to the client. The other one is the sense of, again, the enmeshment that we talked about just a minute ago. If I get enmeshed with a client, rather than holding the space for the client to do the work that they are ready to do here, now we again have two clients and no coach. If I get into the weeds of, I can still hold empathy without getting enmeshed, by the way. And again, the important distinction there. I can have great empathy for what they're going through without getting enmeshed, and allow them to decide, is this the time to do this? Do you have the wherewithal to go through our coaching today? Do you just need time on your own? And have them decide that. Okay. There's a whole training around that piece of it. But again, have that sense of managing my emotions when my client is talking about very sensitive things that might trigger things that I haven't processed yet myself or come to terms with. So there's a huge piece here. Again, just kind of a link to personal development for the coach. Personal development. It's absolutely critical that I continue to have some form of self-reflection, self-evaluation, self-growth, self-management, self-mastery. All of that becomes part of my job description that I must do to become a better and better professional coach. All right. We got about 7 minutes left here. Let me get through the rest of these, and let's see if I have time for a question or two. Maintains presence. Number 4, demonstrates confidence in working with strong client emotions during a coaching process. All right, so we've talked about that, and a lot. Again, it's they're being human. Allow them to be as fully human as they possibly can in front of you, with you, and when they have strong emotions. And if you can't stand that, then there's personal work for you to do around loss, grief, anger, whatever it might be. Or exuberant celebration. That's the other one. I've seen coaches that had clients that were just, woohoo, reba. They're celebrating, and the coach says, okay, whoa, enough of that. Let's get down to, let's come down from that. Because that can also trigger some people in terms of that strong emotion coming from a client. Not as often as the other side of things, but nevertheless, maybe they were brought up, you as a coach were brought up with, no, we don't celebrate, because there's always more work to do, kind of family unit, let's not celebrate prematurely or too much here. We're going to wait until the grand, the big event takes place, etc. So just be aware of that for yourself and notice. You cannot help but be more and more aware of what's going on for you as you hold that space of awareness for your client. That's a guarantee. And it's a great benefit of being a professional coach, by the way. Okay. Number 5, comfortable working in a space of not knowing. Now, this drives people that are subject matter experts nuts. It's like, what do you mean not knowing? I have to know. I've been paid to know. I get paid really well to know. I'm an expert in my field. Thank you very much. And they get great sense of gratitude and personal satisfaction from that. I know I did, because I'm a subject matter expert in a bunch of areas. And as a coach, I had to let go of that. I'm going to say that again. As a coach, I let go of that. So being comfortable in a space of not knowing, I may ask a question and I, honest to God, don't know what their answer might be. And even when they do answer it, I may not know how or why or where that is going to support the client. And to be in that place of not knowing is some of the richest territory for a coach and client to be in. Providing I don't, as a professional coach, buckle, in other words, give in, and say, okay, so now let's find some freaking solid ground here, because I'm real uncomfortable with this. Just breathe into it and be there, and allow the client to figure it out. Even when the client comes back and says, well, Peter, you've been through this kind of situation. I know you have professionally 5 times in your lifetime. What would you suggest? I don't know for you. I really don't know for you. What's really important for you is for you to figure out what's your next step. What do you want out of this situation? Open-ended, what, how. But again, return the ball to their side of the court and have them do the work. Yeah. Number 6, creates or allows space for silence, pause, and reflection. Probably the least used by the new coach. The least used. Because the new coach says, oh, I have to be right on top of it. I have to ask a question. That's the right question. Sometimes silence. First of all, silence is a great gift to the individual because they probably don't get that anywhere else in life. They may not even give it to themselves. So the idea of when a client is talking and they sort of take a breath, don't jump in right away. Allow the pause. 10 seconds of silence in a coaching session may seem interminable to the new coach. I can tell you 8 times out of 10, the client's still thinking because they have gone to a place because of your questioning and because of the space that you're holding. They've gone deeper into a place maybe that they haven't visited for a long time. And new concepts, new thoughts, new possibilities are coming up. Now, 2 out of 10, they're going to say, Peter, you still there? Yeah, I'm right here with you. Is there anything else that you want to say around that? Or what else? What else is a great open-ended question? What else? Okay. But allow that space. Yeah. Okay. So that's it. Let me see if there's any questions that I can answer here in the next 1 minute. Oop. Probably not. So I'm going to go right to the end here. Next week, we're going to be talking about competency number 6, listens actively. Listens actively. We'll just spend the whole session on listening. It's one of the 2, I think, major tools that I have in my toolkit as a professional coach. Listening and asking questions are the 2 upper mind after we've set the agenda and the space to work within. So I look forward to talking to you about that. And in the meantime, have a great week. Stay safe. God bless. Namaste.